In this Warframe Beginners Guide, I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know about KUVA Liches step by step. What they are, how to farm them as fast as possible, and of course, how you can get those very powerful KUVA weapons for yourself, even as a beginner. Big shout out to all our generous channel members who help me keep the lights on, and now, well, let's jump right into it. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, you might wonder, why would you even want to have a KUVA Lich? And the answer to that is pretty darn simple. As I just said in the intro, KUVA Liches give you access to very powerful KUVA weapons. Right now we have, I think, 20 of them in the game, and the only way to get access to them is by beating a Lich who has one of them. Alternatively, you could also go and recruit your Lich for your Railjack crew, but let's be real here, it's very likely you're here for the guns and not so much for your ship. So, I'd say let's not waste any more time and go through the entire process start to finish on how to get you the KUVA weapons that you really want. The first step at the very beginning of the journey is creating a KUVA Lich to begin with, and in order to do that, you have to meet a certain amount of requirements. First of all, you have to finish the story quest The War Within. Before you finish that, you cannot create KUVA Liches. Next, you have to own a Railjack. In case you don't own one just yet, the Rising Tide quest is what you have to do to get one. And finally, you have to be at least Master rank 5, which I think is the least issue here, given the fact that once you have all those quests done and a Railjack and everything, it's actually very unlikely to be below MR5. But yeah, once you meet all those requirements, you can now start and generate your own KUVA Lich. Here's how you best do that. In theory, you can create a KUVA Lich in every Grineer mission that is set to level 20 or higher. However, in order to do that as quick and efficient as possible, my personal recommendation would be to go for the mission Cassini on Saturn, because that's a capture mission, and as we all know, capture missions are very quick. So let's jump into that right now. At first glance, the mission is the same as usual. You go in, knock down the target, capture them, and at some point, you will notice a certain screen flickering as if the Stalker or a rival syndicate would be about to enter the mission. Once you notice this flickering, you have a short time period in which you want to make sure to take out as many enemies as possible. If you manage to hit up enough foes, you will get a transmission creating an enemy called a KUVA Larvaling. This enemy will be marked on the map. You then just need to go there, shoot down the enemy, and once their health reaches 0, they don't die, they just go on their knees, and then you can see a little window over their heads showcasing which KUVA weapon they have, aka if you turn that enemy into a KUVA Lich, then at the end after beating this Lich, you would get that KUVA weapon, which leaves you with two choices. Either, if you like the weapon, you finish the enemy, turning them into your KUVA Lich, or if you rather want a different weapon, then you just ignore them, leave them be, and finish the mission in the usual way. And this is very important. Don't just drop out of the mission, finish the actual mission, and then repeat it. Here is why. In order to make sure that it doesn't take that long to get your personal dream KUVA weapon, the game has introduced a system where if you don't finish an enemy and ignore them, then that specific KUVA weapon will be out of the drop pool until you finally create a Lich, or in other words, it makes it much more likely every time that you get that one weapon that you actually want. However, that only happens if you actually finish the mission and not if you drop out of it. So yeah, long story short, in order to create your Lich, you just go into the capture mission, run the mission, once the screen flickers, you take out a lot of enemies, the Larvaling spawns, you take a look at which weapon they have, if you like it, turn them into a KUVA Lich, if not, just finish the mission and repeat. However, before we go on to the next chapter, there is one more very important key element to creating the right Lich, and that is called the progenitor element. See, every KUVA weapon in the game is not only a stronger version of the base Grineer weapon, but it also gets an additional bonus element on top. These available bonus elements are radiation, magnetic, toxin, electricity, cold, heat, and, for some reason, impact damage, and you can choose which of these bonus elements should be on your Lich weapon. The way you do this is by picking the right Warframe to go into this mission to begin with. I'm gonna put you a little table on screen right here from the Warframe wiki, which shows which element you will get on your KUVA weapon when you do this mission with a certain type of Warframe. So before you jump into this mission and convert your KUVA Larvaling into a Lich, make sure to pick the right Warframe to do so that your KUVA weapon will be generated with the element of your choice. And just by the way, I'm currently working on a full Kuva weapon tier list where I get every Kuva weapon in the game, fully mod them, and put them all into one video with a full build, ranking them to show you which are the very best Kuva weapons in the game. So if you don't want to miss out on that video day 1 after release, you might maybe want to consider leaving the channel a sub. Welcome to the crew. But now that we know how to create a Kuva Lich in the first place, let's go over how to hunt them down. Alright, I have a little disclaimer here, and that is that the whole Kuva Lich hunting part might be a bit complicated. I'm gonna try my best to explain it as simple as possible, but just so you know, please bear with me for a minute. Before we talk about fighting the Lich themselves, there is one key important mechanic to hunting any Lich in the game that we need to talk about before, and that is the mechanic of the Requiem mods. As you probably know, every Warframe has a Parazon, this wrist blade which is totally not inspired by Assassin's Creed, and you probably never really used it. Well, now is the time to do that. On the Parazon, you have a top row of 3 mod slots. These mod slots are exclusive to Requiem mods. Requiem mods are a unique type of mod that only goes onto the Parazon and is only used for Lich hunting, and there are 9 different Requiem mods in the game. 8 of them are the quote-unquote base Requiem mods with different symbols on them, and the 9th one is called Ool and is kind of sort of like a Joker card and can take the form of any of the other 8 types. So, alright, you have 8 different Parazon mods in the game, they have funky symbols on them, and you can put up to 3 different ones of them on your Parazon. Why is that important? Well, in order to better answer that, let's take a look at an actual Kuva Lich fight right here. When your Kuva Lich spawns into the mission that you're currently at, you will instantly see their life bar is subdivided into 3 sections. You can shoot down the first section, no problem, but after that, the Lich becomes immune and you have to hit them with a Parazon finisher in order to be able to damage them any further. Problem is though, this Parazon finisher only succeeds if in the first mod slot of your Parazon you have the right symbol equipped. So, long story short, in order to be able to shoot down all 3 sections of the Lich's health bar, you need to perform a total of 3 Parazon finishers, requiring you to have the 3 right symbols in your 3 right Parazon mod slots there. Don't worry, we're going to talk more about that step by step here in a minute. I just wanted to break down the whole process for you so you see why these Requiem mods are important, otherwise you're simply not going to be able to beat the Lich. So yeah, this would then naturally pose the question, well, how are we going to find out which are the right symbols? And we're going to talk about that in a second here. Before that, I just quickly want to go over how to actually get those Requiem mods. See, as soon as you create your Kuva Lich, as I described in the previous chapter, you will notice that one planet on your star chart all of a sudden turns red. Those missions that are now engulfed in those red goop give you the option to play them as a Lich mission. If you do that, you will see that in certain intervals, special highlighted enemies spawn in. These are sort of the underlings or goons of the Lich themselves, and when you take one of them down, they have a chance to drop you a Requiem relic. Alternatively, you can also play Kuva Flood or Kuva Siphon missions. They too have a chance to give you a random Requiem relic as a mission reward. There are 4 different Requiem relics in the game, creatively called Requiem 1, 2, 3, and 4 relics, and these relics contain the Requiem mods. In order to get the mods out of them, you simply go to your mission select screen into the Void Fisher tab, select the Requiem relic you want to crack open, and then the rest plays like a normal relic mission. If you're lucky at the end, you're gonna get the right mod out of them, and one thing that is very important here, please, just like with any other Fisher mission too, play them in a full public squad, simply because it increases the likelihood that you will get the reward that you want. Alternatively, you could also just purchase the Kuva Lich Hunter collection from the market, or buy Requiem mods individually from other players. Just as a quick price check, I wouldn't pay more than 10 plat for a normal Requiem mod, and for the Ool one, the Joker that can be any other one, I would say 20 is a fair price. Make sure to not pay much more than that. But yeah, this is how you get the Requiem mods, how to put them on your Parazon, and why it is important to have the right ones on it to hunt down your Lich. If you're still here now, then I would be super happy if you could maybe consider giving the video a like, because it helps big time with the YouTube algorithm, so cheers so much for your support. And with all of that out of the way, let's finally talk about how to practically hunt down your Lich. As we just saw in the previous chapter, in order to beat our Lich, we need to make sure to have the right 3 symbols on our Parazon and in the right order. So, naturally, we gotta figure out which are the right symbols and what is the right order. Here's how we're gonna do that. Remember how I previously mentioned that there are those Lich missions, you know, the red ones on the star chart where the goons of the Lich spawn in and you can take them down for the Requiem relics? Well, turns out this is exactly the same thing that you're gonna do to find out the right symbols. See, every time you finish one of those goons, you will see a little progress bar in the top center of the screen filling up. Once this bar is full, aka once you've taken out enough of these goons, one of the 3 symbols is going to be revealed and the whole process starts from the beginning. Meaning, at the end of the day, to figure out which are the 3 right symbols, you just gotta run those Lich missions and take down the goons for quite some time until you fill up that progress bar 3 times, and then you will know which are the 3 symbols that you need. My personal tip here to speed that up would be to definitely go and play those Lich missions in a public lobby with as many people as possible, and here is why. In those Lich missions, not only are you going to face off against the Lich's goons, but at certain points, your Lich is going to be so pissed at you that they will actually spawn into the mission themselves, giving you an option to fight them. Now, as I said earlier in the video, there isn't really much point to doing that until you find out which are the right symbols and the right combination, because you're just going to make them stronger if you fail to take them down. But if you run this whole thing in a multiplayer scenario, then each and every player has a chance that their Lich will come in. And if the other players decide to actually fight their Liches, then everybody in the team, also you, will get additional progress for that progress bar. It's just a win-win situation. But okay, now that we know how to eventually find out which are the 3 right symbols for our Lich, how can we see what the right order is? Well, this unfortunately just comes down to trial and error. See, when your Lich comes into your mission, you can decide to fight them. And every time you attempt to finish them with a Parazon, the game will show you if the symbol for that specific attack was the right one or not. By the way, in the game there's also a certain Lich screen where you can see which combinations you've tried in the past and what was the right position and what was wrong, so you don't make the same mistake that I did here and tried the same combination twice in a row. And this way, by method of trial and error, you will eventually find out in which order you have to put your 3 symbols. But if all of that sounds really tedious, then here I have a tip for you which makes the whole process as efficient as possible. At first, you really want to make sure to have one Ool, one Joker, that can be any of those symbols. When you start your Lich Hunt, you put that one in the first slot and 2 random other symbols in the other 2. Then you start doing your missions, and if your Lich visits you before you've uncovered the first right symbol, what you want to do is you shoot them down and do the first finisher, which is automatically going to succeed because you have Ool. Ool is always right, because if you do a successful finisher, you get a little bit of Kuva, and you want that. However, after that first initial success, you're not going to fight the Lich any further. You're just going to wait until they leave the mission all by themselves, because you don't want to make them any stronger by attempting to finish them without knowing which are the right symbols. Then you're going to continue the hunt until you uncover the first symbol, and you want to put that one in the second slot now after Ool. Once then your Lich spawns in for the second time, you're now going to attempt to go further with the Lich. First one with Ool, just like last time, is of course going to succeed, but then you also go for the second one and see if the symbol is actually already in the right position. If you're lucky, then yes, you're also going to succeed because the first symbol you uncovered happens to be in the right slot, but if not, of course the Lich is going to despawn and get stronger. If that happens, what you're going to do is switch that symbol and Ool so that the symbol is now in the first slot and Ool is in the second one, and you try again if the Lich comes over next time. Again, if you're lucky, then you're going to succeed, but if you fail again, then that also tells you that the first symbol you uncovered didn't work in the second slot, didn't work in the first slot, so it has to go into the third slot, which is also good to know. And from that point on, you're simply going to continue grinding the missions, finding out more of the symbols, and continuing the method of trial and error until you finally end up with the right combination. Now, you might say this is very tedious because if you get unlucky, then you need to have a lot of tries with your Lich, and sometimes it takes a while for your Lich to come back. Is there anything you can do to speed this up? And luckily, there is. In the game, there's a certain item called Requiem Ultimatum. Whenever you finally take down a Lich or a Sister of Pavos, you have a 25% chance that they are gonna drop one of these for you. This is an item that you can add in your inventory wheel, like I show right here, and then you can use it when you're in the mission, forcing the Lich to spawn in right away. I know, it's pretty rare and not consistent, but hey, at least it's something. But now, let's talk about the final confrontation. Once you figured out which are the 3 right symbols, what the right order is, your Lich came into the mission, and you landed all 3 successful finishers, what's gonna happen is the Lich is gonna retreat one last time into a Railjack mission, as you also see in the background right here on my mission select screen. In order to take them down once and for all, you gotta jump in your Railjack and do that mission. What you gotta do here from a gameplay point of view is not really all that special. You know, take down the little fighters, take down 3 cruise ships, and then go into the Grineer Galleon and face off against the Lich in an on-foot mission. Now, quick disclaimer, I don't spend all that much time doing Railjack missions. I upgraded my Railjack once and then simply let it be, so it's difficult for me to say how strong your Railjack needs to be in order to get through the mission, but at least I would recommend not having it completely unmodded and unupgraded. Just try to throw on at least a little something. As for how to take down the Lich themselves, I have a couple more recommendations because I think quite a lot of players, especially the newer tenor out there, might struggle quite a bit with the Lich fights due to the fact that Liches are very hard hitting and can take a lot of damage. So here are my personal tips. First of all, make sure that you have a Warframe that can take a beating. For example, my boy Inaros is very tanky and can easily soak up most of the damage even from a max rank level 5 Lich. Alternatively, Revenant is the most unkillable Warframe in the game, so that always works. Or, if you like, you could just go with an invisible frame, because if the Lich can't see you, then the Lich can't attack you. As for how to deal damage against the Lich, well, I think I need a minute to explain. First of all, you gotta check out your Lich screen. There the game will show you which elements the Lich is resistant and which elements they are weak against. Make sure to mod whatever they're weak against onto your weapon to get a massive damage bonus. And of course, if they're not resistant to corrosive, then you can also go for that because corrosive is always good against Grineer. Next, one thing you never ever want to do is use a weapon that deals a lot of small damage over time effects, because while this is very great against most enemies in the game, Liches can only have 4 stacks of the same status type on them, meaning those weapons that deal 100 heat DOTs or something will not work at all. One very easy thing you could do though is just bring a secondary weapon that can inflict viral status effect on the Lich. I know, not everybody likes this viral priming playstyle, but let's be real here, if you're struggling with one single boss, then I think it's not too much to ask to simply hit them with a secondary first. And finally, let's also talk about the best Lich weapons, and there, unfortunately, the #1 candidates are the ones that are a bit higher level, those being the OG 3 Incarnon weapons, the Fenmore, the Felarx, and the Ladum, because they have this plus 2000% damage feature, and this is extremely strong against Liches. I'm not going to go too much into the details on why that is and which damage calculating formulas are going on in the background, because I genuinely don't think it's important to know here. Just in general, as a recommendation, if you have access to one of these 3 weapons, definitely go with that. If not, that's also no problem though. I personally would recommend a weapon that deals a good amount of flat damage, has a decently high fire rate, and most of all, should be a crit weapon, because I kind of feel like dealing critical hits, especially critical headshots against Liches, is the fastest way to drop down their health bar. But if all of that is still not enough and you're still not getting that Lich down, then there is one last trick, the secret sauce, and that is, well, just run the mission in the public squad with other players. Your Lich might be able to take you down, but I'm sure they have no chance against 4 Tenno at the same time. Once your Lich is beaten, you have the choice to either vanquish them, aka take them out and get the Kuva weapon for yourself, or you could convert them, which means that they now fight for you, and you could put them into your Railjack crew or call them in as an ally in certain missions. If you choose to vanquish them, which, let's be real here, 90% of the players are going to do that, then you will see when you're back in your orbiter after the mission that you received an inbox message that tells you that your new Kuva weapon is to be found in your foundry. We can also quickly go and check it out. Right here it is, the new Kuva weapon. If you don't have inventory slots right now, you can just leave it in the foundry for a while, but you could also just take it out right away, and then that's it. Now, before we wrap up the video, there is one key last point that we need to talk about, and that is the mechanic of Valence transformation. Remember when at the beginning of the video I said that each Kuva weapon will spawn with a specific bonus element? Well, the amount of that element on the weapon is kind of random, capping out at a maximum of 60% of the damage. And if you get lucky, then you're gonna have the 60% right away. But chances are you're unfortunately not. So how can you get the elemental bonus damage up to that 60% threshold? Well, this is where Valence transformation comes in. If you take your Kuva weapon and go into the weapon upgrade screen right here, you can click onto actions and then you have the option to do a Valence transformation. This can be done if you have a second copy of that same Kuva weapon in your inventory already. The second copy doesn't need to have the same element as yours, but it needs to be the same Kuva weapon. If that is the case, you can sacrifice the second weapon in order to increase the portion of elemental bonus damage that you have on your current weapon. This way, you can kind of quote-unquote fuse more of the same Kuva weapon into that one to step-by-step increase the percentage of bonus damage until you reach the maximum of 60%. Don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily saying that you have to do that on every single weapon. That would take quite some time, to be honest. But, you know, just in case there is this one Kuva weapon that you really love and you want it to be as strong as possible, now you know how you can make that happen. As I previously said, you'll most likely run liches for the Kuva weapons. And if you now want to know which weapons are the very best in the entire game, then check out either of these videos right here for the best rifles, shotguns, or melees. Another massive shout out to NeodsV, Demon Lord Zell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nostlinux Gaming, Turtlepeer, Lycan Shepherd, Onakanio2, Pepperwolf, Streamjet21, SignUpKing5000, MihogHE, Yagis, Hoke Hunter, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other, hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, good loot.